These could be very tense and emotional moments inside a Utah courtroom this morning. For the very first time, Charlie Kirk's widow, Erika, and his parents are set to come face to face at a preliminary hearing with the man accused.
If you've spent any time on true crime TikTok, conservative Twitter, or anywhere online following the Charlie Kirk case, then you already know Tyler Robinson's preliminary hearing became one of the most talked about legal events connected to the case. People had been waiting for months to finally hear what would actually be presented in court. For nearly 10 months, the public had only seen scattered pieces of the story, leaked documents, court filings, social media theories, defense motions, and prosecution responses. But from July 6th through July 10th, 2026, the evidence was finally presented in a courtroom before a judge in Provo, Utah. What unfolded over those 5 days turned out to be far more detailed, far more specific, and in several ways, much more complex than anything the public had seen before. This is the full breakdown of what happened during the hearing. We're covering every major development from each day in court, including the evidence, witness testimony, emotional moments, legal clashes, the Lance Twiggs revelation, the engraved firearm casings, DNA figures reaching into the trillions, the ballistics evidence that still did not produce a definitive conclusion, Erika leaving the courtroom in tears, and what could happen next in the case.
Your Honor, renew the standing objection and object on the grounds that there's no indication on this photograph of when it was taken in terms of relation to the actual incident at issue.
Here is the background on Tyler Robinson and why this hearing has drawn so much attention. Tyler Robinson was a 23-year-old from Washington, Utah, when prosecutors allege he walked onto the Utah Valley University campus on September 10th, 2025, and fired a single shot from a bolt-action rifle that struck Charlie Kirk in the neck. Charlie Kirk, 31, the founder of Turning Point USA and one of the most well-known and controversial conservative figures in the United States, was later pronounced deceased after being taken to Timpanogos Regional Hospital. Within 33 hours of the attack, Robinson turned himself in at his local sheriff's office alongside his father and a family friend.
I've been careful on it there. It's 5. Okay, now 5 is a lot, right? I'm gonna give you some credit. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
Great.
How are you doing, sir?
Prosecutors allege the shooting was politically motivated, arguing that Robinson believed Charlie Kirk was spreading hatred through his controversial views and influence in conservative politics. Robinson has not yet entered a plea, and the allegations against him have not been proven in court. He is charged with aggravated murder, felony use of a firearm, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and committing a violent offense in the presence of a youth. Prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. The purpose of the preliminary hearing is not to decide guilt or innocence, but to determine whether there is enough evidence for the case to move forward. The hearing is meant to determine whether prosecutors have shown probable cause. In simple terms, the judge must decide if there is enough evidence for a reasonable person to believe a crime was committed and that the defendant may have committed it. If Judge Tony Graff finds that standard has been met, Robinson will be arraigned, enter formal pleas, and the case will move toward a full jury trial.
This could be very tense and emotional moments inside a Utah courtroom this morning. For the very first time, Charlie Kirk's widow, Erika.
If the judge finds the evidence falls short, some charges could be reduced or dismissed. That legal standard is much lower than the beyond a reasonable doubt standard required for a conviction at trial. Even so, the evidence presented during this week's hearing gave the public its clearest and most detailed look yet at the prosecution's case. For the first time, many key pieces of evidence and testimony were presented together in open court, creating the most complete picture of the investigation so far. Charlie Kirk's parents, Robert and Catherine Kirk, arrived at the 4th District Courthouse alongside Erika Kirk and Predent. It marked the first time members of the Kirk family had been in the same courtroom as Robinson.
As the preliminary hearing in the Charlie Kirk murder case continued in Utah, Charlie Kirk's widow, Erika Kirk, and his parents were seen leaving the courtroom together after emotional testimony.
Earlier that morning, the family released a joint statement saying Charlie was a beloved husband, son, brother, friend, and father. Every court proceeding serves as a painful reminder of his passing and the loss that has irrevocably impacted our lives and the lives of his youth. We remain deeply grateful for the support, prayers, and kindness we have received. That statement was shared by the family before testimony began.
He wanted to save young men, just like the one who took his.
On the first day of the hearing, 2 witnesses were called. Former Utah Valley University Police Department officer Christopher Bagley, who now serves with the Spanish Fork Police Department, testified for the defense about the layout of the UVU courtyard, where prosecutors alleged Charlie Kirk was shot. During the proceedings, Erika Kirk became emotional several times, wiping away tears and receiving comfort from those seated around her. She briefly stepped out of the courtroom on more than one occasion, including during testimony describing the shooting and while videos related to the incident were shown to the judge and the attorneys. The moments were quiet, but clearly emotional for those in attendance. The video footage shown in court was not released to the public. The second witness was David Hull, an agent with the Utah State Bureau of Investigation's Major Crimes Division.
Confirmed that. However, it is a fact that she was supposed to go to UVU on September 10th. I remind you, this is the reason that Erika's assistant and her mother, Tracy, Erika's best friend, told people in their orbit something quite interesting, actually. The reason that they told her that they didn't go is different from the reason that Erika didn't go, obviously. Tracy and her daughter told people that Tracy had a bad feeling.
Hull testified about evidence collected during the investigation, including video recordings provided by witnesses at the scene. A major legal dispute broke out almost immediately. Defense attorneys objected to the footage because the version presented had been edited with zoomed-in sections and blurred areas by the Utah County Attorney's Office. They argued it was not the original video that the witness had reviewed during the investigation, raising questions about how that version should be used during the hearing. Court ended early so the prosecution could prepare and present the original, unedited version of the video. In the meantime, the judge instructed Agent Hull not to discuss his testimony outside the courtroom. That procedural delay quickly became a topic of discussion online as people closely followed every development in the hearing. Reaction on social media to Erika leaving the courtroom during Bagley's testimony was immediate and sharply divided. Some people viewed it as the understandable reaction of someone reliving an incredibly painful event. Others questioned her reaction, echoing claims that have circulated online for months, including commentary from Candace Owens. Video of Erika leaving the courtroom, recorded by pool cameras, spread across the internet within hours. As attention shifted to day 2, the hearing moved into its most evidence-heavy session, revealing the largest number of new details presented so far. Agent Hull returned to the witness stand with the original, unedited surveillance footage. According to his testimony, the video tracked Robinson's alleged movements from around 8:30 a.m. on September 10th through the early morning hours of September 11th. The footage showed a person in a gray Dodge Charger, which investigators believe was linked to Robinson, arriving at a university parking garage before leaving the vehicle. The individual was seen wearing a dark red t-shirt, dark shorts, sneakers, a baseball cap, and carrying a backpack. Hull testified that the person moved through campus, spoke with Turning Point USA staff, and later stopped at a Chick-fil-A.
Then your husband being brutally assassinated and then you referring to his funeral as the event of the century.
I don't even know where to begin. The fact that we were able to pull off an event of a century, like, it's just insane.
Remember when Erika Kirk went on Good Morning America and was talking about how Candace was profiting off of her husband's death?
But when you go after my family, my Turning Point US.
At a later point in the footage, the backpack was no longer visible. Testimony indicating that Robinson allegedly spoke with Turning Point USA staff before the shooting became one of the most notable and least discussed details to emerge during the hearing. Whether that interaction was simply a routine conversation or something more significant was not a question the preliminary hearing was meant to answer. Even so, the encounter is now part of the evidence presented in open court. According to Agent Hull's testimony and newly presented surveillance footage, Robinson allegedly had an earlier interaction with a police officer that day, leading the officer to write down the vehicle's license plate number. The fact that an officer reportedly noticed the vehicle and documented its license plate hours before the shooting quickly became a major topic across social media after the second day of testimony. While many people debated what it could mean, the hearing itself did not reach any conclusions about the significance of that encounter. The focus then shifted to DNA evidence. Utah Department of Public Safety agent Jennifer Famuna testified that investigators recovered a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel from a wooded area near the campus. According to testimony about FBI testing, DNA consistent with Robinson's and his roommate, Lance Twiggs, was found on the rifle, the towel, and a screwdriver recovered from the roof of the Lucy Center. Prosecutors presented this evidence as part of the investigation, while the case itself remains unresolved. Prosecutors also introduced an FBI report stating that DNA consistent with both Robinson and Lance Twiggs was detected on the towel wrapped around the rifle, recovered near the scene of the shooting. In response, the defense called forensic analyst Amanda Backer, who testified that the testing supported a possible identification, but did not establish an absolute identification of Robinson's or Twiggs's DNA. That distinction became an important point of disagreement between both sides. Robinson's parents, Matt Robinson and Amber Robinson, were also present at the 4th District Courthouse during the second day of the hearing. With both the Kirk and Robinson families in the same courthouse, the proceedings carried a powerful emotional weight. One family was mourning the loss of a loved one, while the other was supporting a son facing the possibility of a death penalty prosecution, underscoring the human impact surrounding the legal process. One of the most attention-grabbing pieces of evidence presented during the hearing involved firearm casings with engraved messages. Prosecutors said a Mauser Model 98.30-06 caliber bolt-action rifle contained one spent cartridge casing and 3 unfired rounds, each bearing engraved writing. During the hearing, the court was shown an image of one casing engraved with the word "catch." That image quickly spread across social media and became one of the most widely discussed exhibits from the case. The engraved word drew intense public attention because of the allegations surrounding the case, with many people reacting strongly after it was shown in court. While the hearing did not determine the meaning or intent behind the engraving, the exhibit became a major focus of online discussion and media coverage. Testimony also addressed events from roughly a month before the shooting. According to testimony presented in court, Lance Twiggs said Robinson asked to borrow a Dremel, a tool commonly used for sanding, grinding, or engraving metal, explaining that it was for engraving firearms ahead of a planned family hunting trip. According to testimony, investigators later seized a Dremel tool and several cartridge casings from the home Robinson shared with Lance Twiggs. Prosecutors stated that the casings were the same type of ammunition used in the rifle discussed during the hearing. They argued that the explanation of preparing for a family hunting trip, together with the Dremel and the recovered ammunition, formed part of the broader circumstantial evidence in the case. Prosecutors contend that, when viewed together, these pieces of evidence support the timeline they have been building since September 2025. Lance Twiggs, identified in court as Robinson's former romantic partner, also became a key witness because prosecutors allege Robinson sent him several text messages after the shooting. According to the prosecution, those messages included references to being in Orem, where the shooting occurred, and statements they argue appear to acknowledge responsibility. The defense has the opportunity to challenge the meaning and interpretation of those messages as the case moves forward. According to testimony presented during the hearing, Lance Twiggs has been cooperating with investigators and was briefly placed under FBI protection after the shooting. Jurors were shown part of a recorded interview in which Twiggs told Utah prosecutors that the defendant wishes he hadn't done it. Twiggs stated, "I just asked him in person if what he said was true the night before, and he said it was, started crying a little bit and said he wishes he hadn't done it." That testimony became one of the most closely watched moments of the hearing. Prosecutors pointed to Twiggs' account as an important part of their case. However, it is not a formal confession or a statement made directly in court by Robinson. Instead, it is Twiggs describing what he says Robinson told him during a private conversation. Even with that distinction, the testimony had a strong emotional impact inside the courtroom and quickly became one of the most discussed moments online. During portions of the hearing, Robinson appeared visibly uneasy, particularly when testimony turned to Lance Twiggs. According to reporters in the courtroom, he was seen taking deep breaths, fidgeting, and adjusting his suit jacket as that testimony unfolded. Another major legal dispute centered on the recorded interview involving Twiggs before it was played in court. Attorneys debated how much of the video should be shown publicly. During that discussion, an attorney representing the Kirk family argued that presenting only a redacted version could undermine public confidence in the process, telling the judge, "The Kirk family believes strongly that if the evidence is being admitted in this preliminary hearing, it should be made public for the world to see." Judge Graff approved redactions totaling about 16 minutes from the roughly 37-minute recorded statement. The exact material that was removed has not been publicly confirmed. As the hearing continued, prosecutors also introduced the full text message exchange between Robinson and Lance Twiggs that had been referenced in court filings for months. According to prosecutors, some of the messages discuss Robinson being in Orem, where the shooting occurred, and include statements that they argue appear to acknowledge responsibility. Those messages were displayed in court alongside Twiggs' recorded interview, creating one of the prosecution's strongest presentations of evidence during the 5-day hearing. The defense disputes the prosecution's interpretation and is expected to challenge the significance of that evidence as the case proceeds. The final day of testimony shifted toward more technical legal and forensic issues, while also including some of the hearing's most emotional moments, bringing together complex evidence and deeply personal testimony in the courtroom. During testimony about the DNA evidence, ATF DNA section, Chief Caitlin Oliver told the court that laboratory testing found it was at least 1 trillion times more likely that Robinson contributed DNA to samples recovered from the rifle than that he did not. She testified that this represented the highest statistical value reported under her laboratory's guidelines. Oliver also testified that testing provided very strong support for the conclusion that DNA recovered from the towel wrapped around the firearm and from a screwdriver found on the roof of the Losay Center was consistent with contributions from Robinson and Lance Twiggs, with statistical results reaching the same 1 trillion times more likely threshold under the laboratory's reporting standards. These findings were presented as part of the prosecution's forensic evidence. That statistic drew significant attention in the courtroom, but it also came with an important qualification that the defense quickly highlighted. According to the testimony, the laboratory's reporting guidelines cap the statistical value at 1 trillion, meaning the calculated result could be higher, but the lab does not report figures beyond that threshold. Defense attorney Michael Burt questioned the limitations of that reporting method, arguing that government standards do not permit analysts to describe DNA evidence as infallible or claim it has a 0 error rate. During cross-examination, Deputy Utah County Attorney Ryan McBride asked Oliver, "You say at least 1 trillion times more likely, so it could be a much higher number than 1 trillion. Is that accurate?" Oliver confirmed that it could. The defense's approach to the DNA evidence was careful and highly technical. Rather than arguing that Robinson's DNA was not present, defense attorneys focused on the limits of laboratory reporting standards and emphasized that those policies place boundaries on how strongly analysts can express a DNA match to a particular individual. Experts quoted by multiple news outlets generally described modern DNA analysis as scientifically well established. At the same time, whether the defense's technical arguments will ultimately persuade a jury is a question that would be decided at trial, not during a preliminary hearing. The hearing also included detailed testimony about ballistics evidence. Defense attorney Michael Burt questioned the reliability of testing performed on a bullet fragment recovered from Charlie Kirk's body. A TF Firearms examiner, Samantha Carner, who prepared the ballistics report, testified that she could not determine whether the fragment came from the recovered rifle because it lacked enough microscopic markings for a definitive comparison. As Carner told the court, saying anything but inconclusive was inappropriate. The inconclusive ballistics result had already been highlighted by Robinson's defense in earlier court filings, making it one of the most closely followed forensic issues before the hearing even began. After being presented in court, it officially became part of the public record. Prosecutors argued that the DNA evidence provides powerful support for their case and that the inconclusive ballistics findings do not outweigh the rest of the evidence. The defense took a different view, arguing that investigators could not conclusively determine whether the recovered bullet fragment came from the recovered rifle and contending that this is an important issue for the case. Both sides used the same evidence to support very different legal arguments, setting up a key point of dispute if the case proceeds to trial. After 5 days of testimony and evidence, Robinson chose not to testify, following the advice of his attorneys. That decision is common during preliminary hearings, where defendants are typically advised to remain silent, but it was still noted in media coverage. One of the hearing's most emotional moments came when prosecutors played an enhanced video compilation showing the events leading up to the shooting. As the footage was shown, Erika Kirk and Charlie Kirk's mother, Kathy Kirk, were seen crying and leaning on one another, creating a quiet and emotional scene inside the courtroom. Both women remained seated with relatives, friends, and supporters as they hugged one another and held tissues during the proceedings. Kathy Kirk later embraced her husband, Robert Kirk, while holding a tissue to her face. Erika Kirk's sister, Tanya, reached over to place a comforting hand on her back. The courtroom reflected the emotional reality of two families brought together by the same case. One mourning a loved one, the other supporting a son facing a possible death penalty prosecution. As the courtroom watched video showing the moments leading up to the shooting, Erika Kirk and Kathy Kirk held onto each other in silence. That scene was documented and reported by journalists covering the hearing, becoming one of the most widely recognized images from the week. Regardless of the wide range of opinions that have circulated online about Erika Kirk's public actions over the past 10 months, the hearing itself captured a deeply emotional moment for family members reliving the events surrounding Charlie Kirk's death. The original script also raises a topic that has been part of the broader public discussion surrounding this case. Erika Kirk's public statement expressing forgiveness toward Tyler Robinson, delivered at State Farm Stadium in September's 2025 before a large crowd, has remained a subject of debate and commentary ever since. That nationally televised moment has continued to spark debate. Some critics have questioned why a widow would publicly forgive the person accused of attacking her husband before a trial had taken place, before all of the evidence had been examined in court, and before any verdict had been reached. Some commentators have argued that the timing of her statement raises questions, while others strongly disagree with that interpretation. Those differing views have remained part of the broader public conversation rather than findings made by the court. Supporters have pointed to Erika Kirk's own explanation, saying her decision was rooted in Christian faith and in what she believed Charlie would have wanted. They argue that forgiveness does not mean excusing or minimizing an alleged crime, but reflects a religious belief that forgiveness can be offered even while the legal process continues. That perspective has also been widely discussed since her public remarks. What was documented during this week's hearing is that Erika Kirk became emotional as testimony continued. As Lance Twiggs described Robinson allegedly expressing regret, and as prosecutors played enhanced video showing the moments leading up to the shooting, she cried, stepped out of the courtroom at times, and later leaned on Charlie's mother for comfort. Those moments were witnessed and reported by journalists covering the proceedings. People online have reached very different conclusions about Erika Kirk's public expressions of grief. What the courtroom record from the 5-day hearing documents is that she became visibly emotional during several portions of the proceedings, particularly while difficult testimony and video evidence were presented. Those observations were reported by journalists who attended the hearing. The preliminary hearing concluded on Friday, July 10th. Both the prosecution and defense are now preparing legal briefs ahead of the next stage of the case. The next court hearing is scheduled for September 1st at 10 a.m., when attorneys will present oral arguments before Judge Tony Graff. After considering those arguments, Judge Graff will decide whether prosecutors have established probable cause for the case against Tyler Robinson to move forward to trial. Shortly after court adjourned on Friday, an attorney representing the Kirk family filed a motion asking Judge Tony Graff to issue his probable cause ruling and, if appropriate, move the case forward by no later than September 1st. The filing stated, "A prompt determination is imperative in the interest of justice," emphasizing the family's request for a timely decision. The motion also noted that the case is approaching the 1-year anniversary of Charlie Kirk's death and that Robinson has remained in custody for approximately 10 months. Following the hearing, the family released a statement through Erika Kirk's social media account on their behalf, saying, As difficult as these last few days have been, it brings our family comfort to know that the world has witnessed the overwhelming evidence of what occurred to Charlie that day. As this case moves into its next phase, we pray that truth will continue to be heard through a process that is fair, transparent, and grounded in the facts. Predend, who attended the hearing each day, said the evidence appeared more straightforward than expected. Robinson has not entered a plea, and the allegations against him remain unproven in court. If Judge Graff determines that prosecutors have established probable cause, as many legal analysts expect based on the evidence presented during the hearing, the case will proceed to arraignment. Robinson will enter formal pleas, and a jury trial will be scheduled. The death penalty remains a possible sentence if the case ultimately results in a conviction on qualifying charges. At this stage, however, the charges against Tyler Robinson are allegations, and he is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a jury trial. That legal standard, the highest in the American justice system, has not yet been applied in this case. What the court has completed so far is a 5-day preliminary hearing during which detailed testimony and evidence were presented, giving the public its most comprehensive look at the prosecution's case to date. Now the focus shifts to Judge Tony Graff's probable cause ruling. After hearing testimony about the DNA evidence, surveillance footage, Lance Twig's statements, text messages, and the engraved firearm casings, the judge must decide only whether there is sufficient evidence for the case to proceed to trial, not whether Robinson is guilty. What do you think Judge Graff will decide after reviewing all of the evidence presented during the hearing? The next major step now rests with Judge Tony Graff, whose probable cause ruling will determine whether this case moves forward to a full jury trial. Whatever happens next, the legal process is still ongoing, and many of the most important questions will ultimately be decided in court. We'll continue following every major development as new evidence, rulings, and testimony become available. What do you think after everything presented during these 5 days of testimony? Do you believe the prosecution has met the probable cause standard, or do you think the defense raised enough questions to challenge that conclusion? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you found this breakdown helpful and want more in-depth coverage of major true crime cases and courtroom developments, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with anyone who wants a clear, fact-based summary of what's happening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.